Hello students and welcome to lesson 3 of Python 0 to Hero series. In our previous video, we saw how to display the output messages on the screen using the print command. In this video, we are going to see how to take input from the user using the input command and how and where that data is stored. So let's get started. So whenever we take data input from the user, we need to store somewhere in the computer's memory. This memory is the RAM or the cache memory which is used when the program is running. So when you take the data from the user, it gets stored inside these memory blocks. So your entire memory is divided into various blocks and every block has some address. Like for example, I have written the addresses like these: 1000, 1001, 1002, 3, 4 and so on. In actually, it is represented using hexadecimal numbers, but to make it simple right now, I have just used some random numbers starting from 1000 till 1070. So suppose if I want to store my favorite number 5, so it will get stored here. And if you want to access this, like if you want to print my favorite number, then as a programmer, you should know the address where this data is stored. Now, being a programmer, when we would be dealing with advanced programs, it is very difficult for us to remember the addresses of every data being stored. So that's where the variables are used. What are variables? These are just the names given to these memory blocks. To remember it easily, I give it a name, favorite number. So now this memory block is referred by a name favorite number, which is also known as a variable or an identifier in programming language terminology. Variable or identifier. Similarly, if you store some other number, like if you want to store 10, okay, now this memory address will be given some other name like lucky number. So whenever I write print lucky number, this lucky number refers to the address 1010 and whatever data is stored at 1010 that gets printed, right? And how do we write down this in programming language syntax? We just write favorite number, that is the name which you want to give, and the value. So when you write this statement, the data gets stored like this inside the next memory block address everywhere. Okay. Now let's take one example where I will store two numbers, number 1 and number 2. I will add them and store the result also. So suppose I store 3 in this memory block, 5 in this memory block, give it a name num1, num2. So what will be the code I will be writing for this? I will write num1 equals to 3, num2 equals to 5, and now I will write sum equals to num1 plus num2. So when I write sum equals to num1 plus num2, so first we are trying to access number 1, which is 3, number 2, which is 5. If I add them, we get 8. So sum equals to 8. So it will get stored somewhere like this 8, and this memory address will be given a name sum. So now when I will write print sum, it will return me the data stored inside this memory location. So now let's code this entire and see how we actually write down the Python code for this program. So if I want to store my favorite number, I'll just write favorite number equals 5. So inside some memory block, 5 gets stored and the name given to is a favorite number. And when I print favorite number, that is I'm trying to access that memory location, it will return me the value stored there. Fine. Let's write down a program to add two numbers. So num1 equals 5, num2 equals 3, sum equals num1 plus num2, print sum. So if you run this, it will print 8. Now just pay attention that whenever we are printing, usually till yesterday, whatever we were writing inside the print, we were putting it in the double quotes. But now we don't want to print sum. We want to print the value stored in the memory location referred by sum. So that's why no double quotes needed here. If you will add the double quotes, it will just print SUM there. See. So whatever you write in the double quotes, it gets printed as it is. But when you write without double quotes, it searches for that variable name and prints the value stored in that variable. So this was all about what are variables or identifiers and how the data is stored in the memory. Now we will talk about how we actually take the input from the user. So if I take the same example, till now being a programmer, we were deciding that the first number is going to be number 5 and the second number is 3. But now we will ask the user to enter his data. So to ask the user to enter his data, we use an input command. Inside the input, we can write the message for the user. So enter the first number. Similarly, input, enter the second number. So when you will run this program, it will ask you to enter the first number. So this input box has been there because of this input command. So now enter the first number 3, enter the second number 5. Now when I will press enter, you will get some surprising results. I'll talk about it after a second. So see, 3 plus 5 should have been 8, but it printed 35. The reason for this is that whenever we take an input from the user, by default, Python assumes that the data which is being entered is text data, that is string data. So we have to specifically tell Python compiler that the data which we are asking the user to enter should be a number. And when the number can be a positive or negative, it is called as an integer. So how do we tell it explicitly? By writing here int stands for integer, and putting this entire input statement inside the round brackets. This is also known as typecasting, which I will talk in detail in the next few videos. Similarly, I'll convert this also to an integer. Integer means positive and negative numbers. If you use float, that means you can use the decimal numbers, 5.3, 7.9, etc. Okay, so now if I run this, again, let's enter any number 4, 5, now it will give us 9. So this is how we can take the input. If you want to take some string or text data, just use simple input. Inside the input, you can write down the message which the user can read. If you want it to be a number, you have to explicitly write integer there. Now I will talk about one special aspect of Python, that when we wrote favorite number equals to 5, it stored 5 somewhere inside the memory and it was referred by favorite number variable. Now suppose I write down in the same program once again that favorite number equals to 10. Then you might think that it will go to this memory location and change the data to 10. No, it does not work like this. What happens instead is, at some other memory location, 10 gets stored, and now favorite number name was given to this variable. Now this name will refer to this variable. That is, the previous memory location does not get replaced, but a new memory gets allocated and the new name variable name, that is the favorite number, starts referring to that memory location. Show you this concept through the code as well. Suppose I write favorite number equals to 5 and I print the address of that favorite number. So to print the address, we use a function known as id. Okay, so if I run this, it will give me an address like this. Now I again write down this code, that is, now I will write favorite number equals to 10 and then check. So you will see these two are different memory locations. That means the same memory did not get replaced, but a new memory got allocated, and he was being pointed by the variable favorite number. So now you might be thinking how to decide these variable names when you write your own programs. So there are certain rules you need to follow. Firstly, all these variable names are a combination of alphabets, digits, and an underscore. No other special symbol is allowed. Secondly, they can always begin with an alphabet or an underscore. They cannot begin with a number. Thirdly, if you write a capital letter or a small letter, they both are different. So if I write num and I write capital NUM, these two are different variables. And if you try to include any special symbol or begin the variables with an integer or a digit, it will give you an error. So this was all about input and variables. You saw how to take the data as an input from the user, how to change it to a number if needed, how the memory is allocated to these variables, and how you can decide these variable names. So in our next videos, we are going to see various data types and various operators which are used for processing. Till then, I would suggest you to try executing various programs using print, input, and trying different variable names. Keep practicing. Happy coding.